Albert, Faces of Stone.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We are Faces of Stone. My name is Marc-Anthony Macon.
I'm Noah Diamond.
I'm Amanda Sisk.
And
we just said this was Faces of Stone like 3 times.
Stone. My name is Marc-Anthony Macon. There we go. Okay, so I got the chat window open now for anyone that wants to go ahead and comment while we are going through, well, the return, all of the return.
What is going on, guys? The last time we did this was in September.
It really was a long time ago, it seems like.
We last spoke in this way immediately after seeing episodes 17 and 18 of The Return for the first time.
For the very first time, which, you know, let's say are doozies.
Yeah.
To say the least.
We're being very diplomatic as well. I think diplomatic and covering our own asses. If you watch us, we were very reserved.
We were in a daze.
Did you watch us? I haven't watched us.
We went back for research to see what we'd said.
Okay. I did not, and therefore I'm going in completely blind because I've forgotten everything that I said. I'm just going to lie about what I said.
You were an idiot, a complete idiot the whole time.
Okay. That was my plan, so I have the same plan this time around.
You accurately predicted almost everything that happened in the series.
Except that you didn't predict that Norma would die. I did.
No one predicted that Norma would die. Holy shit, where did that come from?
You know?
Well, one thing...
So, like, just to start off, and I think we'll probably come back around to a bit of this more general stuff too, but, you know, when we first watched it, it was drip-fed to us. We got basically 1 episode a week, and then we had a week to really chew on that and, you know, decide what we thought might happen next or how we felt about what we just watched. And now watching it all at once, and I just watched the whole thing, like basically 6 episodes, definitely 6 episodes a day for the last 3 days. And for me, it really seems to work, and this is no surprise, I guess, but much, much better watching it that way. It really, like, it flows more naturally. The pacing of it seems to make a lot more sense. And it feels more like a thing watching it this way than it did the way we originally watched it.
I certainly feel that way. And I think, obviously, it's less suspenseful now, but I find it a lot more enjoyable, partly because, yes, it does feel slightly more coherent, and it seems to follow a little more when you see it in closer proximity, but also just knowing the whole thing now, you know? I mean, like when we went through it the first time, we did watch each episode at least twice before the next week's came on, but we rewatched all those early episodes without knowing how it was going to wind up or that it wasn't going to wind up, if you prefer. And now if you could just take the general ambiguity and the sort of inscrutable quality as a given, it's easier to just sit back and enjoy it without worrying about what it means or whether some individual element has significance.
Agreed, yeah.
I think it was easier too because, yes, when you're binge watching it or when you're watching it all as a whole, you don't get angry and resentful about a woman screaming in traffic for 3 minutes because you think 2 of those minutes could have been used for something else. You just kind of go with it a little bit more. And you're not waiting for something to happen and you think, oh my God, I just had to sit there and watch this for 5 minutes. Watch the damn sweeping of the peanut shells. So those kinds of things.
The beautiful, holy sweeping of the peanut shells. My God.
Oh my goodness. So, you know, it was easier to take those kinds of things because they were in a sequence that just kept moving. You didn't have to wait for somebody to give you another 30 minutes.
Right. I also feel like watching it now, you know, having seen it and known generally what was happening, I was able to focus a little more on what I think this whole thing is about. And, you know, I think as a lot of people have said, in the simplest of terms, it's, you know, how you really can't go home again, or if you do, disaster ensues. And so watching it with that eye, I think you're able to pick up on a lot of other little things that you might not have noticed or looked at in the same way the first time around because you were really kind of thinking about plot a lot.
I think it's interesting for us to note early on in this postscript that the return is apparently not really the return. That's the way we think of it, and that's the way, I guess, Showtime marketed it during its run. But it's interesting that on the Blu-ray set, which is kind of the reason we're getting together on Twin Peaks Day to have this postscript, because we've all revisited the series on Blu-ray, it doesn't say the return anywhere anymore at all. And it's funny because I went from feeling early on in our original experience with it like it was just sort of cheap. You just add the return to the title to make your reboot. But then as the series went on, it started to seem like, no, it actually is a great title for this because it's about this epic sort of return. And just when I got comfortable with it, it's no longer even called The Return. So we're returning to nothing.
How apt.
So overall, though, I feel so much more. I mean, I enjoyed it the first time through, of course, but I feel it's much easier to sort of step back and appreciate it as a work of art now. And that's how I watch it now, more like looking at a painting than following a drama.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That we seem to have lost Sisk in the. Okay.
I left my notebook in Noah Diamond's room.
Oh, okay.
There were 2 pages missing.
Kendall, you've been in Noah Diamond's room?
Okay, page is missing.
Glad I got it.
So we watched Fire Walk with Me, Fire Walk with Me, Fire Walk with Me, Fire Walk with Me, however you decide to say it, today. And we had been talking about the diary pages, of course. And really the only explanation, and everybody's going to go, yeah. But the only explanation is that the Herald scene happens at the end of the movie. It's at the end of all that sequence. I mean, it makes sense because she hasn't written down the Annie thing. Why would she worry that Bob was going to get it if it was already gone? The pages were torn out and they were clearly written by her, and they were clearly written after she realized that Leland was Bob, which happened after that. So Harold had to have taken the diary much later than we saw.
Or there's a part where she goes back and adds something to the diary.
But the pages that were torn out were the ones that, I mean, there were more torn out pages than somewhere. Because the pages
Leland also had some pages that he bleached from her diary. Didn't Leland have some diary pages he showed her when... So those were the pages, right?
Huh.
I mean, I think that there is possibly, almost certainly, intentional obfuscation going on with these diary pages. That it doesn't quite add up.
Yeah, I think it's kind of that so much of this stuff deliberately doesn't add up. It's also interesting since we went through The Return, we've rewatched the original series also. And it's funny, like compared to what we now think of as the Twin Peaks thing, the actual original 2 seasons now seem like a fairly straightforward
really
television show. I mean, and yet at the time, and I guess up until recent experiences, that was always thought to be like inscrutable and it doesn't add up and you have to kind of think about it a different way from what you think about a standard linear mystery. But it almost is a standard linear mystery now.
It really is. Well, I mean, part of that, of course, is just that like 80% of people working in television today are heavily influenced by Twin Peaks, and maybe you're even there because of Twin Peaks. So its footprint is just on all of the stories that are all over television. So it just seems more standard now because it isn't so completely different from everything else that's on TV. But The Return really is. Which still surprises me. Like, I remember when it was coming back and, we were thinking like, I'm sure it's going to be bizarre, but, how is this going to change the way that I think about TV the way that Twin Peaks did? And it didn't, but it did change the way I looked at TV.
Yeah. Can I give you an interpretation? I don't think this is a universal answer, but watching The Return now, and by the way, it does look beautiful on Blu-ray, doesn't it?
It does. Streaming does not do it justice. It is gorgeous and sumptuously shot.
Yeah, it is quite a spectacle just to look at.
Wait, hold that thought 1 second, Noah, because
Yes.
we just got someone commenting here. Wilton is saying she discovered Leland was Bob, gave the diary to Smith. Leland presumably found the diary, tore the pages, killed Smith, and left the remaining diary pages, went to the station, hid the pages. But then what about the Annie thing? I think that's the question, right, Amanda? That she had the dream about Annie after she gave the diary away. In Fire Walk with Me. Amanda Sisk, are you frozen, or you look wonderful in your stationary?
I think you're. Hold on. I think we lost.
Oh, there we go. You're back. And now Noah's gone.
Yeah, he was coming to check on me, but I'm here.
Okay, so
I'm still in the house. No, I'm still here. It's okay.
I've got your cat.
Hello. So anyway, but the issue is that she gave the diary to Harold, and then she had the dream about Annie.
And then she went back, but she. Okay, I mean, yeah. So he tore out pages twice.
Theoretically, I guess he also could have collected them from the crime scene at Harold's somehow. Anyway, sorry, Noah, please continue with what you were just about to say.
Again.
Yes. Oh, yeah. When I look at the return now, one way to look at it, and I think this is sort of happening in it, is that we're watching two different plans unfold, two competing plans, and each of these plans was a way of dealing with the emergence of Cooper from the Black Lodge and the paradoxes set up by the fact that his doppelganger is out there. And so there's, broadly speaking, the good plan, which is forged by Cooper, Major Briggs, Philip Jeffries. Mike and the Arm are kind of also allies in this plan. And then there's the bad plan, and these parties are not necessarily in allegiance, but they are working toward the same ends, with Mr. C/Bob and Judy and the evolution of the Arm's doppelganger. And we're watching these two plans playing out, and these two plans are competing with each other, and each plan has all these contingencies in it to anticipate what the other plan is providing for. So the fact that the door below the Great Northern that takes Cooper on his journey back to the woods to save Laura, the fact that door would be opened by the key, which is the one object Cooper has on him when he, goes into the Red Room. And in part 17, Cooper says to Sheriff Truman, Major Briggs said you would have this key.
Right.
So, and then the fact that Cooper awakens from his coma, not only apparently fully cognizant of everything that happened to him during the Dougie period, but even of seemingly impossible details like where Bushnell wears his gun and where his clothes are in the cabinet. Mm-hmm. And also in part 17, at the beginning, when Gordon Cole has that long, there's a bunch of stuff I never shared with you, Albert, speech. One of the things he says is that he and Cooper and Briggs were working on a plan that would lead them to Judy.
Right.
So as these two plans are sort of competing with each other, that's what we're watching. We're watching the result of 25 years of the good Cooper team and the bad Cooper team planning for this confluence.
Yeah, I mean, that's... I have no holes to poke in that theory.
Because I didn't really say anything.
But I mean, I think that it does seem that, you have these opposing, these dualities aiming at the same kind of goal, and it's a race.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi, I moved to the kitchen.
I see.
I'm seeing two Amandas. There's Frozen and slightly puzzled.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you have a doppelganger.
Yeah,
I do.
Wow, this is really two Sisks.
Two Chalfants.
So, Amanda, how did you feel about episode 8 this time around? I know that you loved it the first time it aired, but has that adoration abated?
The second time we watched it through, I think it was the second time, I was able to know what I was about to watch and so have a sense of humor about it and not be so serious about it. And so I therefore enjoyed it more.
Okay.
I think the third time I watched it, I was like, okay, and it didn't seem so long. Parts of it didn't seem so long anymore. So I think that must have meant I was enjoying it. I also just wasn't expecting anything else to happen except for that. So I just sat back and watched it. And as you would say, probably let it wash over me in some way so I could just sense it. And then
it does seem to go much faster every time you watch it.
Absolutely.
It did. It definitely did. It started going faster. And I still won't watch Frog Moth.
So have you still never seen the frog moth go in her mouth?
Once I walked into the room and it was happening right then.
Okay.
And I screamed and was like, I've never seen it before now. And now look at this. And it's still there, but I just.
Yeah, but these are both really good points. I mean, part 8 and a lot of other things in the series are easier to get through now that we're not like, oh, come on, I want to know what happened to somebody, or I know I want to get to this part of the story and learn about that. Like now we know that we're not going to know any more than we know. So
there are parts that take the same length of time though, or still seem really long. Like the freaking jail scenes, I just want to rip my face off. I want to rip my face off, like that other guy.
I want to rip my face off.
What a dick, like I hate this thing.
Should I be making porpoise noises?
Oh my God. And like I understand my face is right here. I'm sorry.
No, it's nice.
Chad and all that. It's just I didn't need it. I didn't need to go through that.
Well, that's another thing about seeing it on Blu-ray is, as you say about the frog moths, like you don't actually have to watch the whole thing. And I mean, we have gone right past like Richard Horn assaulting his grandmother, a couple other things. You're like, not every time. No, but after we are reminded of how delightful it is.
I wanted to ask.
Remained just perennially uncomfortable. It is so hard to watch. It is so hard to watch.
I mean, part of that is the bear thing.
Right.
Well, and there's like that like an ode to joy or something. There's something, lilting in the background that's beautiful. It's like all of the combination of these sounds and what's happening it's one of the worst things I've ever watched.
Itchy Armpits at the Roadhouse. I have not savored that every time.
Which one was?
Itchy Armpits at the Roadhouse.
Oh, geez, Louises. I can't. That was the thing I was so angry about, was that, we were waiting for so many things to happen. And we thought so many things were going to happen. And then we had to spend 5 minutes with Itchy Armpit and drinking fake beer out of fake bottles, no beer in them. I mean, it was just like this.
There's like not even an attempt at verisimilitude at all. It really
put water in them. I mean, I don't know. He presumably had a budget to get somebody to put water in the bottles.
No, it had to be intentional. I mean, there is a fakeness to all of those booth scenes that has to be intentional.
Well, I mean, the girl getting picked up and put on the floor, and then she like crawls. And this time I was like, maybe she can't walk. Maybe that's what it is. And then I was like, no, she can. She totally can.
Did you see the thing though, where you can sync that up with Dougie sticking the fork in the socket?
No.
Yeah. So you can. There's a thing where if you line it up you can start them at just the right time. They crawl at the same thing, and then as same speed and pace, and then as soon as he sticks the fork in the socket, she screams. So that's a thing.
One thing I did not appreciate the first time through, but this time I have really come to understand, is how many red balloons there are in
quite a lot of red balloons there.
In the return. I don't think we ever talked about it, and I don't think I ever identified it as a thing. But this time through, it seems like there's a red balloon in not virtually every set, but there's a lot of red balloons.
Well, there are a lot of them. I mean, there's outside of Dougie's office at Lucky 7. There's the balloons on that sculpture. The 119 woman has balloons laying around in her house.
Sunny Jim's birthday party. Right. And also Dr. Amp in one of his monologues says, like, they're going to pop like red balloons.
Yeah.
Red balloons. And then it's a really interesting segue as well into addressing also Dr. Amp, who we've never addressed, the fact that his name is Dr. Amp, and he has those electricity bolts on his tie.
Yes.
He's Dr. Amp. He's electricity. Like, I don't know why, he's that, but, and gold conducts electricity, and I don't know. It just never occurred to me that his name was Dr. Amp until, I don't know, like 3 weeks ago.
Well, I mean, alchemy and all of that shit is definitely like a big part of Mark Frost's backstory with stuff like, the secret history and things like that. He definitely gets into the alchemy kind of stuff, and Aleister Crowley and that whole crowd of amusing ne'er-do-wells.
So do you want to do some like bests and worsts, or you have some questions in your notes, Amanda, that might
I do have questions. These are deep and heavy. Let's do these later.
Well, I would really like to know what.
Okay, well, I do want to talk about Dr. Amp. The shovels. Okay, so he's getting them in bulk. This delivery guy presumably knows exactly how to do it. How, he unpacks it for him. This is not the first time he's done it. He's set up this whole machine thing to help him do it. How many of these does he sell?
Oh, I mean, it seems to be his main income.
I mean, look where he lives. It's not.
Yeah, right. He doesn't seem to need a lot to survive there. But, I mean, if he's gone to all the trouble to make that much, he's got to be making a lot of them. Right?
So according
to the secret history of Twin Peaks, he's like kind of become somewhat of a national celebrity. Like, I think he's kind of like the Art Bell of Twin Peaks.
So maybe he does have like a large following and sells a lot of these shovels.
A decent-sized following that extends, nationwide, theoretically. So a lot of people have gold shovels hanging in their...
that's what I'm asking. Should we do this? Is this what we need to do next? Start selling some kind of pull yourself out of the crap thing. Right. Like, and we'll sell you bungee cords, silver bungee cords.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going. All right. What do you think were the funniest moments? From this season?
Okay. Well, for me, you could sit me down and tell me for the next 6 hours, we're going to show you just candy over in a loop. All the candy stuff.
Oh, candy.
And I would just sit gleefully watching 6 hours of looped just candy. I love candy with all my heart.
Best. I just love this. Hey, Noah, say something.
Wally Brando. The Wally Brando scene. There is a lot of really funny stuff in The Return. And if you watch it all close together, at least once an episode, there's a really good laugh, except maybe the first 2 episodes. But after that, it is really funny. But the Wally Brando speech is just, it's so audacious. It's so brilliant. And it's just
what did we read or what did we hear about Michael Cera saying, I thought I was going to be there all day?
Yeah, they did 2 takes, right?
He did it twice. He did it twice, or something like that.
It's really, it's a great rebuke to everyone who ever says like, well, why? Why does he do this?
Tom Sizemore.
The Sizemore breakdown.
It's so fun. I watched it again, and it's like, the bathroom seems to be a long way away because he runs for a long time. So I'm sure there's like a plant, or he could have just run away from the cup or something, but he takes the cup and he runs and runs and runs and runs all the way to the bathroom. I'm still the fact that he throws the cup away kills me every time. Like, he dumps it out and then throws the cup away. He's so funny. I never met the hurting one. I'm vomiting blood. Everything he says after that point is, I can't stand it.
I really, this time I loved Audrey's dance. It was just really beautiful and haunting to me.
I felt uncomfortable towards the end. I felt it had gone on a bit. But I felt that way about much of the series.
Oh, well. Good.
Audrey's dance, I liked Audrey's dance. And if you imagine the season without it, then you really almost would wish Audrey hadn't appeared at all. But yeah, Audrey's, the whole sequence, it further complicated the question of, is any of this real at all?
Who is the dreamer?
Indeed.
Wait.
Well, I mean, I feel like one of the reasons that I've, especially watching it this time, really come around to liking the whole Audrey, let's call it a subplot, being that there was a lot of talk at the outset that she wasn't going to be in it enough, and people were really kind of upset that they weren't getting the Twin Peaks they wanted. They wanted, Audrey to be there and sassy and sexing it up for Cooper. And instead you just got this little weird insert, but she ended up being one of the most talked about elements of the show because of that. I mean, people were...
Yeah, Amanda had a very interesting thought about Audrey this time through. Maybe she's a tulpa. Some of what she says is very similar to what Diane's tulpa says.
I'm not me. I'm the only person I can trust, and I don't know who I am. Am I here? Is this Ghostwood? That sounds very like a tulpa kind of thing. Or yeah, like I'm really somewhere else, but this is me. And then she wakes up later.
When Diane is saying, I'm at the sheriff's station, I'm at the sheriff's station.
Right. Which, the first time I heard that, I thought she was saying, I am a sheriff's station, which is just bizarre. Who would say something that weird?
Really? Do you think that would be weird to say in the show?
It's so fucking weird. If she had actually said, I'm a sheriff's station, I would have been out and never watched it.
I'm surprised it's not a line already. I think if we looked through, we could find it. It's probably what that little bug noise is. I'm at the sheriff's station.
Another like just tiny detail that like I appreciated this time around is, now I'm forgetting his name, but what's the name of the like milquetoast deputy?
Oh, Jesse?
Jesse, yeah. I just like how just aggressively boring he is, and like when he'll like stand and pose like I'm trying to look somewhat interesting, or when he's asking the sheriff to come look at his car. I don't know why, but it just cracks my ass up. Like he's in no way interesting, and that's beautiful.
The way Albert looks at Gordon.
Oh my God! Yes, it's
especially like after what does he say when he says, "You heard me"?
You heard me. Yeah.
I want to hear you say "please," and he goes, "What?" or something like that. And he goes,
"Yeah." And just Albert's like Miguel Ferrer, like his when the French woman is leaving. His performance in that scene is magnificent, and he barely moves his face.
He doesn't, and then she leaves. Gordon tells the stupid joke about turnips. His face still doesn't move. And then they stand there and stare at each other for a really long time. And then Gordon says, like, I really worry about you, Albert. And Albert just has to get through it. He knows. There's a whole thing that's going to happen, and I got to get to the end, and then we can talk.
Albert's character in this series, Albert is the ultimate audience surrogate, because you spend the whole season watching him have to be patient with David Lynch.
Right, yeah.
Yes, that's so brilliant. Well, he is our metaphor. Albert is the metaphor for the people.
Right. So when
Lynch apologizes,
suddenly,
apologies in advance for Albert.
And suddenly,
I'm sorry for the way you feel, but not really.
At one of the end episodes, suddenly David Lynch turns to him and says, "Oh, I forgot to tell you something that I should have told you 25 years ago." And he's talking to us.
And Albert does not strangle him. And when you're 20 minutes into a nuclear explosion, you think, what would Albert do? And he would just stand there like this and just
say, I brought
look blankly at Gordon.
But it's, it's fascinating. Like, to me now, that Albert is Albert. So when I watch the original series now, I'm kind of like, look at that little kid.
I know, he is a little kid.
Like
it flashes back to Gordon. He's so tiny. His little unlined face. It seems like much more than 25 years ago.
Oh, it's so weird to me because, of course, like those were old people when I watched this show. Mm-hmm. Gordon was an old person.
Yes, that's why it seems like so much more than 25 years ago because we were older.
It really does.
It's strange too, seeing like the original series and this season in close proximity to see how just the way people age differently, and how in the return, when Cooper and Bobby encounter each other in the sheriff's station in part 17, Bobby kind of seems older than Cooper now.
Yes.
Poor Bobby. I think he got too tan.
Too much sun, yeah. A little too much sun.
Well, I'm going to go back to Audrey and the Tulpa-ishness again. Mm-hmm. Who would have made her?
Evil Coop.
Evil Cooper.
Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. But why? Does it matter?
We don't know.
Well,
it's like
let's say if perhaps like he takes the real Audrey to Dutchman's or the Black Lodge or someplace, deposits her there, replaces her with a Tulpa that then bears his child.
Mr. C has been very busy for 25 years.
Right.
I mean,
do you think he switched it out in the ICU?
I don't know. Like, is that possible? I mean, I guess that.
Yeah, Doc Hayward says I figured he went in to check on Audrey Horne. Maybe he went in there to get some of her hair. Oh yeah, right.
Also, like, I've just
conceives Richard.
About Doc Hayward. Am I reading this right? Is he telling a joke about crapping his pants?
I don't know. It's weird.
I found 2 rabbits in my pajamas. How they got there, I don't know.
Yeah, it was brown trout, is what I heard.
2 brown trout.
Oh.
Well, Marc-Anthony, the bowels are not what they seem.
I have no response.
Is it so future gross. Or is it past?
Oh my God. Shut up. I just realized I don't have something.
What's?
Nothing.
Okay.
David Duchovny.
That definitely is one of the comic highlights of the series, and a great scene.
It is a really sweet scene. Like, their relationship is adorable.
It's because David Duchovny, Denise is a really good guy gal. Like has always been just good.
I noticed this time through that scene does clear up an ambiguity, like when he says, when you were undercover with the DEA, because it always seemed like, well, is Denise FBI or DEA? Mm. And in that a positive, Gordon clears it up. He says, back when you were a wild young thing in those days, when you were undercover at the DEA.
One of the best lines ever, too, is in that, I told them to fix their hearts or die.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I think that's what we should. I think that's what we who believe this perhaps should adopt.
Yeah. Your hearts or die.
YouTubers who don't agree with us, that's fine. Mm-hmm. Just me. But maybe we should adopt that. Fix your hearts or die.
Fix your hearts or die. I like it.
Hey, I would really like to know what you guys think is the worst head injury in season 3.
The worst?
I think it's Ruth Davenport.
I don't know. What about Tracy and Sam?
Or
their head injuries were pretty grievous.
Yeah. Hastings.
And also the people in the radio station with Got a Light, Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
You could do a swell montage of all the head injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And then during the original series where everybody kept getting smashed into pictures. And then Johnny smashing himself into a picture.
A lot of picture smashing and head injuries. And then, sometimes these things are combined. They're not mutually exclusive. You can injure your head by smashing it in a picture.
Yeah.
how would this have changed our perception of the whole season if Sarah, instead of taking the glass bottle and breaking it and smashing the photo, she had smashed her face against it over and over again?
That would have been interesting.
Because some of it happened backwards, so it would have been really interesting to see the backwards happening.
Watching the whole thing this time, when I got to the end, I got to the very last episode. My feeling going into that was I don't know if I want to watch this episode again. Really, it's kind of a downer. I basically know what happens, and a lot of it is just long stuff not happening. I'm not looking forward to watching it, but I've come this far, I might as well. And then I just found I really found that episode a lot more beautiful than I remembered. I really enjoyed it.
I was excited about seeing episode 17 again, and I was scared of seeing episode 18 again. Yeah, I don't know. One thing about part 18, just mechanically, is there's an awful lot of downtime in that episode. And because it is the last one, and the first time through, you're kind of hoping it might tie everything up or answer some questions. And it really is an awful lot of just watching him drive. And,
It's Lost Highway.
A lot of Lost Highway. So it's in Lynch in his hypnotic mode, which is, there's a lot to appreciate about that. But with the burden of suspense, it's frustrating. And without the burden of suspense, it's artful. 17 is really exciting and beautiful, though. I mean, I think knowing how it all ends or doesn't end, 17 is more satisfying than it used to be, because you realize how very much they actually do give you in 17. 18 seems to start it up again. That's a question. Do you guys, this is kind of a Theses of Stone prediction question. Do you think there will be any more Twin Peaks?
I think there might be. Maybe save for the end. Let's all of us say what we want, what we think would happen, or what we want to happen if there is another season. But just to answer that question right now, I think it seems pretty likely if Showtime has the right dump truck of money to give David Lynch and Mark Frost and a clean slate, total control, carte blanche to do what they want, why they probably will.
Well, Lynch said it took us years to make season 3.
But he also he's maneuvering to get what he wants. If he's going to do another season, he has to make it look like it would be hard. And while I'm sure it would be lots and lots of work, I don't think it's going to take another 4 years for him, because I think the reason that it took them that long is it had been 20-something years, and they had a lot to unpack to figure out where you could take the end of that story. I think now they probably would have a pretty decent idea of where they're going and already be on a fairly good roll to make it happen.
I think that Showtime knew what happened to the original second season, or to the second season, and how it kind of ran off the rails and how nobody liked it. And I don't think it was that popular this time around. I think people stopped watching it, especially after episode 8. I don't think they have the excitement that they had, because it's not, that Bumulink is coming back in style or anything like that. It's just, well, maybe this might answer some of the questions we didn't get answered last time when we were so fucking frustrated.
But do they have another show that's bigger than that?
That's bigger than
did it get them enough subscribers to make it worth it, I guess, because I have no other reason to watch Showtime personally.
Right.
And how many people are like that, and is it worth it for them?
I think Showtime has been kind of deliberately vague about putting any kind of quantification on the success of the 3rd season. It does seem like viewership was higher in the beginning, and it did drop off significantly. They always seem to say publicly that they had the biggest increase in subscribers ever as a result of this series being on. But that speaks to how interested people were in it before it started.
Afterwards, they would be, if Lynch and Frost want to, they would do another season. I think Showtime is on board.
I think they have said that, yeah.
So
yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't it's hard to say confidently that there won't be more, because we might have said that a few years ago.
Right.
And it was many more reasons to think so a year ago. Not a year ago, but 5 years ago or something. But it does seem like the third season, just like the second season and the first season, ends with a kind of, either this will hang in the air forever, or we're gonna get back to this.
Well, and I think no matter what, that, and this kind of solidified that for me, that kind of has to always be Twin Peaks. I don't think if we ever do get a solid conclusion, it would seem like Twin Peaks in any way.
That's right.
It's always going to be an additive thing where you keep like saying, oh yeah, you thought you understood, now we'll put this, and this is another whammy in the way that you look at this. But I would love to see more. But of course, I will just, if David Lynch did a thing where he was like, I'm selling my toenails, I would be like, all right, take my money, Mr. Lynch.
Ingrown empire.
He would call it Twin Peaks. I mean,
he would call it Twin Peaks.
Yes. Well, okay. Well, so first of all, there was something I was intending to watch to the end to see if I could come up with a theory. Noah, remember I was watching for all day?
The Tree?
Yes, The Tree. And I didn't watch the last shot today.
Right, we didn't get to it today.
So, the tree in Laura's yard. There's a tree in her yard. And I wanted to see what size it was in the last shot, when and you don't know what time it is or what year it is compared to the earlier shot. And I haven't done that. So if anybody's watching it right now and you want to compare it, or see if there's no tree, or see if it's a huge tree, or see if it's a tiny tree, might be an indication of something, might not. I think some shots there's no tree at all, so it's probably nothing. Second thing is, I compiled a list of questions, and I think some of these are pretty interesting, but I don't want to take over the whole thing. So here's some options of questions. You can answer. Take over. I generally do. Okay, a couple of questions that you can choose from. What was an unanswered question that you really thought was going to be answered? That you really thought just was not going to be hanging out, there was not a Lynchian thing, that you really thought, oh, well, this is going to get answered. How do you think this season serves as a design piece rather than a narrative? And is that enough? What does Mr. C mean when he's in the jail and he says, I've never really left home, Gordon? And then the last question is, was this show about Twin Peaks?
Okay, so what's the first one again?
What was an unanswered question you really thought was going to be answered? What was it? Something you really thought was going to be tied up? You had ultimate faith. It was, of course it is. This is going to be answered. And it wasn't. Or was there one at the beginning?
Yeah, How's Annie is one of those.
I really do. I thought we were going to get a little bit, at least hear more than Annie's name mentioned, I think once. I think, it was just when that came up. That was the only time we heard about it. So it's like, it's information that they didn't forget that Annie was a huge thing, just more or less enough to let you know we're not telling you.
Well, he says, oh, I think that's Annie Blackburn, a local girl.
Right.
Who also went in that place.
Yeah. That's all we got about Annie.
Did she come out?
Banger of the old series, and all we got was, yeah, she existed.
She came out. She's fine.
It's interesting when we were not that long ago watching the original series to see, like, oh, I mean, they didn't really answer many of our questions then either. Like, the owls are not what they seem. We don't know exactly in what way they're not what they seem. Or this theory has emerged that maybe the owls are the woodsmen somehow, but that's never really been indicated. I mean, a million things. That gum you like is going to come back in style. Like, so many things that seem iconic to us now were originally like, what?
Yes.
Wait a minute, what? And so now our list of those is longer. I think, but what happened to Annie is probably it also seems like at the end of the second season, it's like we are just kind of getting back to this question of Bob and the nature of Bob and how these inhabiting spirits work. And then it's instantly complicated by this additional concept of doppelgangers, And so it's not just that Cooper is possessed by Bob, it's that his evil doppelganger is possessed by Bob. And now the return adds a further dimension with tulpas. So like it gets more complicated, not clearer.
Yeah. And I think like we were saying before, I mean, that kind of is the charm of Twin Peaks, is that anytime you understand something, you now don't understand 5 things.
That's
the
right.
charm.
That's the charm.
Yeah, that's what I like about it. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, it really is, because my favorite emotional reaction is, what? And so like Twin Peaks, it's like just throwing gasoline on the flame.
That bodes well for your love life.
Yes, it does. So
No,
okay, what's the next question?
I was feeling
Wait, no,
really
you
good
didn't
about
your own question, Amanda.
Huh?
Did you answer your own question there with what you thought?
What did I think was going to really be tied up? I thought Audrey was going to be more tied up. I mean, I really did. I really thought Audrey was going to be more out there. What else? I don't know. It seems pretty obvious, but I didn't actually think of the answers to these questions when I was writing it down. So,
did either of you also think we'd get a little bit more with Shelley's daughter? You know, not necessarily in terms of tying up, but just like she was kind of there for some things, but she didn't figure much into anything.
There's a very perfunctory quality to a lot of those storylines.
I think her storyline served to let us know that the rest of the storylines were not going in any chronological order.
That's yes. Well, and also like just kind of giving us a glimpse into how downhill Twin Peaks had gone in the last 25 years, that the town itself still had lots of problems that seemed exacerbated from the last time we visited, so to speak.
But like Marc-Anthony, I think you pointed out that Steven's descent into madness or whatever, and her descent into anger with him happened out of order. And like the time when she drove Shelley off the top of a car happens before she calls and says, "There's something wrong with Steven." And Shelley's like, "Let me get you some pie."
Yeah.
Which wouldn't have happened in that order.
It's all out of order. Like so much of the show. I mean, I'm sure someone has gone and done an analysis that like tries its best to defend what the actual order of the scenes and the return are chronologically. I don't have the kind of, someone must have done it, but yeah, it's weird. Steven is vile, by the way. He's
I can't even look at that guy.
And when he's like, "Cuff me," it's so gross. He's like the guy in the jail. He's no different to me.
Okay, what's the next question?
All right, okay. So there's been a lot of talk about how this looks, and we even talked about it on Blu-ray. It's beautiful. So how does Twin Peaks serve as an overall design piece in our zeitgeist, or just in general, in the Twin Peaks-verse, in the Lynch-verse, and also is that enough to hold it up? Because a lot of it was, we were watching pure design. It was like going to a museum and, you know, or art direction or art or whatever you want to call it, but we're watching visual art, not a narrative necessarily. So how are those things separate? Do they have to work together? Just kind of thoughts about that.
There's definitely an evolving aesthetic from the original series through Fire Walk with Me to the return. You know, the original series has a distinct look and feel and warmth to it that you don't find in Fire Walk with Me or the return, although there's a lot in common. By the time it gets to the return, it's a very different kind of vision. It's dazzling. I mean, the return is so it's on one hand very cold. It feels very cold and mechanical and eerie and distant, and yet it's so brazen in its use of like over-the-top artificial effects that it has this sense of wonder about it, but not warmth.
Yeah, I mean, it's very sparse. I feel like the return, it does have this kind of like almost clinical quality to it, and you know, a lot of the shots are as close as you can get to a blank canvas without it actually being a blank canvas. You know, there's just a few elements in it. It's, but there's something like palette cleansing about it to me.
When they used to talk about the White Lodge, I mean, I think we can all say that is not what we imagined.
No.
But when you saw it, where you're like, oh, okay, this jives. This is fine.
That totally worked for me.
Were you a little bit? I mean, because I think this is also a product of heaven and hell and one's upbringing. But
Sure.
I expected, the White Lodge to be a lot less confusing than the Black Lodge. I expected it to be a lot more light than the Black Lodge.
But I feel like
it really seemed kind of scary and antique and static and stagnant.
But I mean, is the Black Lodge what you would have imagined? Was it when you were originally watching before you'd seen the Black Lodge, or knew that the Red Room was the Black Lodge? Did you imagine the Black Lodge being like oozing tar pits with fire?
No. But it's much more, it's more confusing. There are scary things in there going at you. And there's no one there are no angels or anything like that on the White Lodge. There's nobody being particularly comforting towards you. Whereas in the Black Lodge, there are people being uncomfortable towards you. Awkward.
But I mean, no one was attacking anyone in the White Lodge.
Senorita Dido is pretty comforting.
She was so beautiful. We talked about this before, but I still every time I watch episode 8, I'm just like, she is one of the most gorgeous human beings ever. I just love watching her parts.
She's wonderful.
Which parts do you enjoy watching the most?
Yeah, I thought you might find Senorita Dido comforting, Noah.
But I mean, I do think that the White Lodge's aesthetic is comforting. I think that it's like, it's a callback to in specific era, but definitely to the past. It's an institution of sorts. It's like this is a structure that you're somewhat familiar with, even if you've never encountered it. And since the giant is called the fireman, it's like he's kind of there to put out fires. So there is an urgency to what he's doing, but it's still being done in this slow, methodical, godlike way.
There's something about the word lodge. I mean, in its use in the original series too. I mean, the word lodge suggests something more of the world of the Northwest. You picture a building, a sort of building built of logs in the woods somewhere, used as a recreational spot for outdoorsy activities. And the fact that it's not that at all is just what it is. I guess it has a philosophical meaning too, but as it turns out, you sort of forgive the simplicity of the black and white and dark and light and the stuff like Hawk's evolving map that's always accurate, that has symbols on it that Frank doesn't even want to know about. That gets us off the hook. Just have him say, you don't want to know. That'll do it. I was imagining earlier, I was telling Amanda that, I was thinking about Lynch and Frost in a writing session being like, well, we do have to deal with the whole Bob thing. That was kind of the whole crisis originally, and, it doesn't even matter. It could be anything. There's a British kid with a green glove, okay, done.
It is one of the more bizarre. I mean, to say that a British kid with a green power glove is one of the more bizarre things in Twin Peaks is a statement. I mean, it's one of the strangest things.
Is it though?
I mean, I think it really just comes down to Lynch's sense of whimsy. I think that he was just amused by this kid doing accents on YouTube and was like, I want to hire this boy.
Yeah.
Put him in a green glove and we'll have him punch Bob's lights out.
Bowling Bob.
Bowling Bob, yeah.
Yes, Bowling Bob.
Yeah, I kind of imagine that, Janine Garofalo would come in and say, all right, now I'm going back to grad school. That was the deal.
There was something else I was going to ask based on what you just said, Marky, and I cannot remember what it is. Oh, well. I really can't remember. Somebody else talked. It was about it being a design piece, but I can't remember what it was.
Here's a bit of trivia for you. What is the first word that Ben Horne speaks in The Return?
Beverly?
Yeah.
Beverly.
Beverly.
Suck it to me, suck it to me, suck it to me.
Oh, okay. Here's what it was. Okay, so it's not just a nod back to 50s and 60s fashion. These people are working with phones that are ridiculous, and they're working with, you know, like, especially, okay, you watch Firewalk with Me and you watch Chet Desmond. I mean, he really, like, these, and the machine that Kiefer Sutherland has is so, like, big.
That's just weird, a machine.
For looking under fingernails
and everything. Like
it's not like we could use a microscope or magnifying glass, or why do we have this huge thing? So why are they? I mean, why do we let him get away with that? I guess why do we let Lynch?
It's delightful. I guess, you know, like, to me, it's cute somehow.
How about all that FBI equipment in the hotel room? They travel with all this stuff. They set up all these complicated electronic devices.
Like blinking lights. Like, how do you read that? You're seriously, Gordon's just like, look at the way those red lights are flashing. That means that Cooper is in a hospital in Las Vegas.
What could it be? What could it be? Have you ever seen one of these, Albert? It's the internet.
But then he's like, pack it up. We're going. So, like, what? Tammy's supposed to pack that shit up?
Right.
I like Tammy better this time around, too.
I noticed something today. I did not, by the way. But okay. I did notice something today, that after they shoot Diane and she flies around in, like, a deflated balloon and then leaves the room, immediately after, like, she says, oh, that was a real tulpa. I can't believe it. And then they go to some other scene, and then they come back, and and Gordon says, I couldn't do it. And Albert says, you're getting soft in your old age. And then Gordon says, to the bureau. And then they all have a toast and drink wine. Isn't that weird? Like, they just shot Diane. She flew off into the sky. And the next thing you know, he's like, oh, to the bureau. I mean, what the hell? Are you kidding?
To the question of whether there is more to come, Wilton Abreu in the comments on YouTube makes an interesting point that he says Showtime is still investing a lot in the franchise. And since they're doing that, we may be hopeful there will be more. That's true. There have been pop-up Roadhouses and pop-up Double Rs in California and other places. That's true. They are still pouring effort and money into, like, keeping the name going. You could say, you know, it's to promote the Blu-rays, but yeah, it does seem like they're keeping it alive in that sense. Hey, Mark Anthony's got a cup of coffee.
No, unfortunately, it's not coffee; it's tea, but it is in a Double R mug. So
I see that.
What is that on the side of your mug? A sloth?
That is, it's a tea sloth.
Oh, I thought it was a frog moth.
If I can get a frog moth tea strainer, fuck.
You're
Someone
right.
out there, there's got to be a designer there that can make frog moth tea strainers.
There, you know, it's already done. It's, you know, it's like on Etsy right now.
Have already done it. Yeah, I have, like, I've been searching the internet trying to find a I Am Dougie's coffee mug that is accurate to the one in the show. Yeah. Showtime is selling one, but right under that saying, it says, like, copyright Showtime or whatever. So fuck you. That's not what I want. I want Dougie's actual coffee mug.
Right.
If you want the good merch, you got to make it yourself.
I know.
I thought you were about to make a joke based on Fight Club when you're like, I am Dougie's coffee mug, and I was like trying to figure that out.
Dougie's ruptured sleeve.
I am Jack's labored narrative device.
All right. Here's a question I didn't ask, but let's ask right now. Why Philip Jeffries? And here's
Philip Jeffries at all? Why is he in the series?
Why is this whole thing basically about what Philip Jeffries is doing when he was such a minor character in the first place? And none of us would have said, well, this whole season is going to be based on Philip Jeffries and tea kettle Philip Jeffries or not.
Well, I mean, I guess.
Second was, how did people know it was Philip Jeffries? Because before, like, I didn't read any internet stuff or watch vlogs or whatever, but it seemed like people just suddenly knew it was about Philip Jeffries long before anybody had said Philip Jeffries. Am I right?
Yeah.
How did you guys know? Am I stupid? How did you know?
Well, mentioned in, like, the first episode or so, I think.
When Mr. C is trying to contact him and he talks to whoever that person is who doesn't sound like Jeffries but claims to be. But it is interesting. I think a big part of what Twin Peaks in all of its incarnations, it's about absence, the absence of something important. And like the original series is about Laura Palmer, but she's absent from it, you know. And in The Return, Cooper is ostensibly the main character here, but he's basically in meaningful ways absent from it the whole time. And in The Return, so many of the important figures in the story are the people who are basically not there. Jeffries, Major Briggs, Laura, Cooper. What did you guys think was the worst head injury, though?
What did you think was an unnecessary plot line? There are many probably that were unnecessary, but also just like kind of a not good enough really to include. Like maybe the White Album should have been a single album kind of thing.
Very, very strongly say that it was the James and the rich woman that wanted to have her husband shot plot line. I know that wasn't in The Return, but it was so bad that it still taints The Return. I still cannot enjoy The Return as much as I would like because James went off and had to fix that woman's car in season 2.
Do you think that? Well, he did redeem her, by the way. She was redeemed. Because that's what happens. But do you think that storyline was any worse than Catherine Martell and burning the mill and we used to have sex for 3 hours?
All right, had Piper Laurie played her too, I might have liked it. Anyway, but to, like seriously, like in The Return, really, I think the plot lines.
I could do without the stuff that's anguishing and painful, but for no good reason. You know, a lot of the Richard Horne stuff, like, you know, you watch him commit atrocities thinking that it's going to be meaningful to the story, or like the way you're feeling about him is going to be important, but it really isn't. And when he has his seemingly arbitrary and kind of offhand death, I felt like, oh God, do we really have to watch him like torture his grandmother and hit a little boy with his truck and everything we see him do, including his scene with Balthazar Getty? I don't know. It's like every time Richard Horne is on screen, it's painful, and it's all just for nothing.
Okay,
did any of his actions move the plot along? Like besides for him? The killing of the kid did not. Miriam did not.
Well, you could say the killing of the kid brings Frank Truman to Ben Horne's office, and Ben Horne gives Truman the key.
Okay, here's a question. Cooper comes into this world as Dougie with a key. He loses the key. The key gets mailed to the Great Northern. It gets given to Frank Truman, who then gives it back to Cooper. Why didn't Cooper just keep it? I mean, I guess he was Dougie, but still.
Well, he didn't deliberately cast it off. He left it in Jade's car, not knowing what it was.
Responsible enough to mail it.
I mean, I guess we had to see the key travel in order to understand that it was. But I mean, I think
that
we talked a lot about that key.
The key to me is also like another little wink to the whole, you know, playing around with what is real and what is not. Because that key was never in the original series. The key to his room was never seen. And it's created those keys. I have one. In fact, my apartment keys are that same key thing.
Yes, they are.
It was just made by someone that started selling them on like Etsy or something. And Lynch and Frost just thought it was cute, so they used it, I guess. But I mean, on the back of the key, when she looks at it, it says "clean place, reasonably priced," which would not have been on the key. That is a reference to the series itself. You know, like that's what Cooper was asking for. He's wanted a clean place, reasonably priced, and Truman's like, I can get you a good rate up at the Great Northern. So it's another wink at the non-reality of what's going on here. You know, kind of like possibly Billy being a reference to Billy Zane. And, you know, of course, the Monica Bellucci dream.
Yeah, that's all true. And it's also
and
another
Audrey, like calling that song Audrey's Dance, that was the name of the track on the CD. That's not the name of the track in the diegetic world. There were lots of little, like, we're actually winking at the real world here references with that. But that was a tangent from where we were.
No, I think that's really valid. And also the sort of reincorporation of iconography, like the cherry pie and referring to coffee as damn good. All those little things. Yeah, it's like it's a way of sort of both giving you what you expect and also withholding it. One of the things
the interesting about those things, those, you know, like the damn good coffee and stuff, that was so much less satisfying for me this time around than it was originally, because originally it was like, this is all we're giving you is a little something. And now that's not what I'm looking for. So I don't enjoy it anywhere near as much.
I think it was, Noah and I talked about this time around, which we waited too long because we had just watched this. So we started watching this again a couple of nights ago, and I just kept falling asleep. And so we were watching this up until the second, like, we dialed into this, and I didn't finish. But when we were watching it this time through, we were talking about the damn good coffees and the cherry pie and all that stuff, and how it seems like Cooper was being taught again.
Mm-hmm.
His own terminology, like the kid who gives him the coffee is like, damn good, right? Damn good. And somebody else says something about something else, and like they kind of give him his lingo again, and they're teaching him. And Noah brought up the point that it seems like everybody in the lodges end up taking care of him. It leads them to the pie, and it leads them to this guy, and like it leads them to this. And so it's like everybody's kind of taking care of this Dougie guy until he blossoms into Cooper.
What do you guys think about the theory that and I don't know if anyone has really I don't know how circulated this is or not, but like they're watching the original series, Hawk talks about the two lodges, and, you know, the Black Lodge will test your spirit, and you'll have to face your shadow self, and if you face with imperfect courage, then
it'll utterly annihilate your soul.
Right. So, you know, like I guess there's the argument to be made that all of the return, or maybe most of the return up until, you know, close to the very end, is just Cooper versus his shadow self in the Black Lodge. That this is never actually in the real world at all.
Say again, please, in a way that explains it like I'm 5.
So Cooper goes into the Black Lodge to save Annie, or whatever. Okay. He goes in there, and there he gets split into regular Cooper and a doppelganger, and then each of them just does their thing. And we see that's what the Black Lodge does. So it's not actually, Cooper never left the Black Lodge in the beginning of the return. He's still there, but he feels like he's left and is trying to catch up to his evil self, but he's stuck in this Dougie thing and can't quite get out. And that's part of good Cooper's problem, is that he has that Hamlet complex of can't act. So it's these two sides are actually kind of fighting out in the Black Lodge to see theoretically what would happen by being presented with what would happen if they re-entered the world. And then when he actually comes out at the end and sees Diane, that is the real world.
Yeah, that's quite a moment. He comes out, and that kind of is like he went in there to get Annie 25 years ago. And then he walks out, and there's Diane. And it's like, all right, ready? Let's get in the car.
Right. Let's get in the car and go have the most uncomfortable sex we could possibly have.
Right.
Because, I mean, I'm sure there is a more uncomfortable sex scene somewhere.
I'm sure.
I don't think I've seen it.
No. I don't want to even go back in the catalog of my mind to think about ones that I've seen that are more awkward than that.
Very upsetting, that scene.
Yeah, that's one of the things about part 18 that I just can't quite buy into the use of screen time for, you know.
There are two things other than that I want to talk about. Noah's idea that Cooper's happy ending was, what right here I brought me. Cooper's happy ending was that he was going to be with Janie and Sonny Jim. And that kind of happened. You were so distracting. So
Cooper's
that kind of happened with Dougie, with the second, with the tulpa, the second tulpa. Speaking of the second tulpa, Cooper, what we know is good Cooper. Now I keep harping on this. Says, I need you to make another, which suggests that he made Dougie.
Do you think he made Dougie?
Yes, I do, 100%. And I don't know how that jives with anything, but yes, I do.
I feel like really strongly that Evil Cooper that Mr. C made Dougie.
It makes much more sense.
Cooper is aware that there is a tulpa out there, that a tulpa was made, and he wants another tulpa made.
I tend toward thinking that Mr. C made Dougie partly because he made Diane. He made the Diane tulpa.
Why did he make the Diane tulpa?
So that he could send it text messages and get it to do his bidding. But that's it. It's like the good plan and the bad plan, Part of the bad Mr. C plan is like both plans have their own separate Dianes and their own separate Coopers, like working toward
what does Cooper want?
Yeah,
Mr. C want?
He wanted Judy.
But what does that mean? He wants to like commune with Judy?
Yeah, I think it's unclear whether like he wants to, because theoretically she's his mother. Like we see her spit him out, right?
Right.
Theoretically, she created him.
Well,
so
she created Bob, right?
Yes.
Right. Yes. Okay, that's true.
He wants to be Voldemort.
Well, I mean, I think there's also the argument to be made too that Mr. C, while not the pure at heart Boy Scout that Cooper was, still has kind of noble means. He's just going about it in more nefarious ways, and that most of the people we see him harm are actually bad people, and that he
hangs out with bad people.
What?
Because he only hangs out with bad people,
right? But that basically, like, his goals are the same as regular Cooper, in that he wants to destroy evil, but he's going to do so much more roughly than the Dale we know would. So he's trying to find Judy to kill her. That's one possibility. And then another, like you said, Noah, is he's going to commune with her or take her power.
Everything on?
Yep, I'll be right there.
Okay. I didn't just want to stay here and keep logging when Noah's in the other room, like flailing around or something. That'd be terrible. Okay, so the happy ending thing. That was very interesting. That is what happens. Dougie goes back and he's very happy to see them, right. And he says the. But
I think your concern, Amanda, might be though that if Cooper had made the original Dougie, we saw how well that went. He just ended up being a boozing, gambling, cheating husband. But I think what we are led to believe is that Mr. C made that original tulpa, so since it was made from his DNA, it's bad and tainted. And since Cooper made this one, it's going to be maybe not as good as the real Dale Cooper, but a much more effective, sweet, loyal husband and father.
That is exactly right. And I should have thought of that before. So thank you, Marc-Anthony.
You're welcome. I think it's a happy ending for Janie E. and Sonny Jim. I think
it's a happy ending for that little tulpa who I don't know how.
Otherwise, I have no life at all. So good on you, new Dougie.
Yeah. Okay. I've never really left home, Gordon. Says Mr. C in the jail.
Does he say I've never really left home, or I've never really left?
He says I've never really left home, Gordon.
Why does he talk so? In both jail interrogation scenes, he's different. His voice is slow and deep, and it's a whole different thing, even from the normal Mr. C affect. How do you feel about or explain that?
My running theory, and I guess I have no definitive reason to say this, is that he was affected by the accident and or was trying to cover up the fact that he couldn't entirely act like normal Cooper by making it seem like he was affected by the accident. So rather than just try to flat out imitate real Dale Cooper, he's like, I'm going to be after the accident Cooper.
He keeps saying something like, "It veered off in another direction. I
was a little behind schedule, and
yeah.
I'm coming to see you." It is really strangely said and spoken.
And when he's so he says, "I've never really left home, Gordon. I've never really left home."
We'll get you home. He says, "I never really left home, Gordon."
I really don't know. Does anyone that's watching have any theories? Because I don't have a good explanation for what that means, other than maybe if home is Philadelphia, maybe it could mean that like after Mr. C, visited Major Briggs, he then went back to Philadelphia and was doing spying and whatnot there. He did say that, or at least based on what Tulpa Diane said, it seemed like he showed up and really wanted to know what was going on with the FBI. So he does seem to have some interest in what Gordon and crew were up to.
Anybody have any thoughts on how exactly Dougie's ring winds up in Major Briggs' stomach?
And why is it brought up that Janie E is Diane's half sister? Diane the Tulpa's half sister? Why?
That I don't know why, but that is an element that kind of contributes to my sense of these two competing plans unfolding. Like part of the plan that led to the creation of Dougie also provided for him to be kind of in this safe place where he would be taken care of and would be ushered around as he needed to, and that would happen to be somebody who was connected to Diane. Mm-hmm. It speaks to, it's like there may or may not be an overall universal logic to Twin Peaks, but there is a sort of logic to these two plans that are playing out.
Yeah, I mean, part of it also seems like, Mr. C is, well, he's, kind of perverse and sick. And so I think that he wanted to kind of mess with Cooper's life and the people that were remained from it. So, using Diane's sister to kind of foster his decoy just had a perverse pleasure for him, if nothing else. And also it'd be easier to keep track, maybe. But then did you always run the risk of Diane going to visit her half-sister, and being like, we're no longer estranged. And what the fuck? Your weird, lamer husband looks like Dale Cooper?
She said they were estranged and they hated each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, how did it get in his stomach?
Initially, I remember thinking that, like, Mr. C had to use the murder of Major Briggs as like a ritual to create Dougie. Mm. And that's somehow how it, was the thing. But now that doesn't really make sense after seeing the entire series. So, but I mean, it does seem like the ring was used as a totem of sorts somehow. But it also could have been similar to the letters under the fingernail, taunting the authorities with information.
These locations where you can enter the lodges, that sometimes they are these vortexes in the sky. Glastonbury Grove in the original series and in this series is one of those. They always seem to be connected with sycamore trees or things with the name sycamore. The glass box in New York that Sam and Tracy are watching, which we are basically told is the creation of Mr. C and is paid for by Mr. C, I guess. Mm-hmm. That's like an attempt to make one, right? To create one of these portals for the purpose of catching Cooper when he tries to exit.
I wasn't clear if it was like an attempt to create one of those portals or if it was like a portal already kind of existed there, and it was more of like a net, to catch things that were coming through already. I wasn't clear on which of those it was supposed to be.
Well, why is this suddenly like in New York City and not outside of Glastonbury Grove?
Yeah. Yeah, I
it
don't
must
know.
have some kind of hole.
Because if you can make it here. Cooper appears in that.
If they all have the stuff, he had the goods.
He just showed up with nothing but a handful of headshots and a dream.
If you really wanted, you could make it, Dougie.
Cooper appears in that glass box when he emerges from the lodge. He appears in that box briefly, sort of floating. Right. This is during the time that there's nobody in the room watching because Sam is downstairs letting Tracy in and where's the guard and all that stuff. And then shortly after Cooper disappears from that place en route to an electrical outlet in Las Vegas, that box fills with sort of black fog, and then Judy appears there, and we have some head injuries.
Yes. Some of the more egregious head injuries early on.
Yeah.
Early egregious head injuries.
Something that got a huge laugh from us this time, which I think I'm able to laugh more because I am, like I said, I'm developing more of a sense of humor about this thing and less of a sense of, seriously, you have to tell me what the fuck happened 25 years ago. And when Hastings gets his head plucked off or pecked off, and the guy goes, "Oh my god!" He jumps out of the car.
Yeah.
He goes, "Oh my god!" again. It's the funniest thing.
I don't know the name of that actor, but I really do appreciate him in this series. Like he
funny.
Plays I can't believe this in a really unique way.
Detective Mackley is the character's name. It's such a response that a person in real life would have, but that a cop on a TV show never says, "Oh my god!"
Well, and then also we get that great bit from Gordon right after that, which is, he's
dead. Yeah, right. Which is practically, oh yeah, I hate when that happens.
And I was like, Gordon is one of my favorite things in this series. He's just absolutely delightful. And I saw them, Albert, dirty bearded men in a room. Like, why are those words so amusing to me?
It's good stuff.
You once said dirty bearded men in a room drinking decaf, and that's what I remember now. And it makes me laugh a lot because they're just so much worse now. It's like 20 times worse. If I went out the woodsman drank decaf, holy shit. I want nothing to do with them now.
Okay, that's something else I was thinking about. Just this brought this flag up for me while I was watching it. Is that in no small way, a lot of this season, especially episode 8, but really a lot of the season was kind of like a critique of the consumerism of the nuclear age and how gross it is and oppressive and parasitic. Yet, so is coffee. Coffee does some pretty evil things ultimately. Like there's a lot of coffee that people are drinking that children are picking, and
well, Dr. Amp is talking about
all lunch coffee is fair trade. All lunch coffee is fair trade. Pies are made from organic Washington, locally grown cherries because they grow a lot of cherries there. Everyone.
That is one thing we did learn from our experience with The Return. But what about Dr. Amp talking about how we're being poisoned? He's just spraying gold spray paint into the air for hours.
Hypocrites. Looks like we lost Sisk again there.
She'll come back. We'll get her.
She'll return as she always does. So.
Now, you're looking for wireless? She's looking for wireless.
Okay, all right. We can wait out her wireless quest.
She's coming back. She says we can keep talking.
Okay. Well, let's see. Did you guys, by the way, did you happen to do the thing where you could watch episodes 17 and 18 at the same time? Did you do that?
I didn't do that. I think I saw on YouTube like a little sample of somebody's efforts to do that. I find that stuff, you know, it's interesting, but only a little.
I gotta say, I loved watching it that way, and it was just fascinating, whether intentional or not. There was something really poetic about it. You know, even if it's only because maybe the structure of their brains as they were, you know, finishing their story happened to line up in these interesting ways. It really does have some spooky moments of crossover, and is in no way distracting to watch them both at once, which makes no sense.
Well, very little happens in part 18. I mean,
yeah. Amanda, did you have other questions? Are we?
Well, there were some more questions about kind of big idea. Oh, best and worst character writing, like given what they were given, and best and worst performances.
Okay.
And those might line up, or they may be totally different.
Okay, so best and worst characters. This is based on their lines or their performances.
Based on, well, it can be characters. I would say based on like what they're given. Actors, performances. Right. I would say based on.
Well, I mean, I do want to say that like I just loved Dougie. I really dug the whole Cooper as Dougie being their thing. It totally worked for me. And the more annoyed people got by not getting the real Cooper back, the more delighted I was. I loved it. Loved it. I loved it.
Did not have any issue reconciling the fact that Dougie must have been more functional than that before Cooper took over. He must have been. Otherwise, he would have been disabled.
Right.
At home.
I mean, they talked a few times about how he was having one of his episodes. So, you know, it seems like usually he was somewhat more functional, and then occasionally he would go mildly catatonic and just be pushed around by everyone for a few days until he returned to his regular semi-able self.
I feel like that's why we're in a dream, because nobody cares. He comes back with different hair.
Everyone comments on it, but no one thinks it's that weird.
You get a haircut? No, it's not a haircut. It's like,
well, and also like you have trouble peeing. Like, you know, that's what happens when you're dreaming. Like, you're like, I gotta pee, but for some reason I can't quite pee. It's like, oh, because if I do, I'll pee the bed. So you wake up.
But exactly. And like, yeah, I can't. You get stuck when you're trying to walk, and
right.
I don't know.
And you have little things that you know are familiar, but you don't know why. Like, you know, hearing the word sycamore a lot, or
yes.
I think some of the worst characters are it's kind of obvious. Like Stephen is. I mean, Stephen, I would put worst in terms of both character as written and, you know, screen presence. I maybe that actor could be wonderful in some other context.
He was not enjoyable to watch in this.
Genuinely unpleasant whenever he's on screen.
Mm-hmm.
And Chad is a despicable character. A little bit more of a traditional villain, though, and you dislike him, but it's not like viscerally upsetting to look at him.
Wait! I'm sorry. It is 4:30, so everyone, you know, hey, I like you all, just in case it's all different.
Remember 4:30.
Okay. Mm.
It might all change, and then we're talking about Charles.
We've got to charge forward, though.
Kiss me now, guys.
I'll go get my red wing.
We're going to come back and we're going to be vlogging about Friends. All right, go ahead, Noah. I'm sorry.
Those are, I mean, in terms of like actors giving bad performances, it's hard to tell. There's a kind of David Lynch acting style, this very flat delivery of lines, a kind of long pauses. In another film, you couldn't accept it as good acting, but it does work in his thing, and a lot of the actors are doing that and have clearly been instructed to do that. At the best performances, I mean, there's some very easy answers to this, but Laura Dern, Naomi Watts, David Lynch himself, they all gave spectacularly good performances. And Kyle MacLachlan, it is genuinely impressive. And going through it for a second, third, and fourth time, not being too concerned about, are we going to see the real Cooper? It's a little easier to sit back and say, what he did with this role or these roles is really impressive.
He did play like 5 roles. I mean,
yeah, and there's truly nobody else in the world who could. He's just been set up for 25 years of a career to like do that. Yeah. But in some of the and Michael Cera, of course, Wally Brando forever. But
best performance and best character meet.
Yes,
it's just he was just the writing of that is so good. The delivery is so good. My Dharma is the road. Your Dharma.
Your Dharma. But in some of the less like spectacular performances that I still think are just quite good but less big and flashy and obvious, Bushnell Mullins is a great character. I really like him. I also, more and more, the more I see it, I really admire what Robert Forster did with a really difficult thing to be like this other Sheriff Truman. But it is very reassuring when he's on screen. He's this stoic presence in the middle of all this madness, and he sort of just goes along with everything. He follows everybody into the woods. What just happened to us?
Lynch's first choice to be Sheriff Truman.
Yeah, I heard that too.
I'm really curious to see what the first 2 seasons would have been like with him instead of Michael Onken. That would have been a curious, interesting.
It would have been totally different. It would have been totally different. I don't think he could have had the like loving brotherly interaction that King Cooper had. It would have been kind of a dad like. I wouldn't
skip that as much.
Revisiting the original series, it is kind of striking how much of it is a kind of story about Cooper and Harry Truman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the Cooper and Truman show. They're totally in love, like right down to the nose boobs. I also like the Mitchums are just great new characters that I adore. They're some of my favorite characters ever, really. Like I think they're adorable and hilarious. I love every moment they're on the screen. And, watching it this time when they first show up, I can be delighted. Whereas when watching it originally, I didn't quite know who they were in terms of the story. And it was a weird scene that didn't seem to fit with the rest of it quite yet. But now knowing who they are, it works a lot better.
Yeah, when they're first introduced, they seem like stock organized crime characters from some other kind of movie. But they do become a lot more than that. And I would definitely put
going that way.
Going back
actually, they're stock characters from another movie. They're Tarantino. I mean,
but they
Tarantino process.
Yeah, but they certainly acquire another level as it goes on, and
the Tarantino characters.
Yeah,
I mean, they are Tarantino people, so it's just very difficult to watch Tim Roth do that.
Oh, Hutch and Chantal. Yeah. Sorry, I meant the Mitchum brothers.
Oh, the Mitchum brothers. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Hutch and Chantal, yes, they are. They never get beyond that. But the Mitchum brothers do, and they are. I certainly, in your original or earlier question, Amanda Sisk, people are under a lot of stress now, Bradley. I would put that near the top of my list of comic highlights of season 3.
Your candy cut is completely healed. Candy cut.
Your candy cut. Cherry pie. That was
his little check dance, like.
When he says, if there's one certain thing in that box, okay, what is it? And he just goes. I mean, he just knows. He knows there's no cherry pie in that box. Go look at what's in the box. They're so good. They're so good. And when he's like eating and he's like, I just hate that guy so bad.
He's like, as he's pouring that big picture of me. Like,
you wait 3 more hours? I don't know, man. It's ruining his breakfast.
They sit right next to each other and they eat their cereal in the morning.
Like they've been doing since they watched cartoons together in the 60s, like that's.
Yeah. They own all the same clothes in different colors.
The girls are like, he just got out of bed. He's coming.
Yeah, he's just coming out of the bathroom now.
I hope the girls have each of them has a closet full of pink dresses.
I was wondering about that and how often they get them cleaned. I was also thinking each of the girls has different tasks. Like one of them's task is to make one of the guys drinks. One task to make the other guy's drinks. Clearly, Candy is the
head girl for some reason. That's her main job. Swatting flies.
Swatting flies, yes. It's so interesting. They all have these little roles to play, and I'm sure that they all sleep with, the guys.
The series definitely doesn't ever go near that question. Although, yeah, it seems somewhat self-evident, but they never ask us to really deal with that.
Well, they never ask us to deal with the fact that anybody has sex except for Cooper.
That's an interesting question. Does anybody except Cooper ever have sex in season 3?
Oh, in season 3.
I mean, Cooper does have sexual.
I guess Sam and Tracy attempt sex. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. They get their heads pecked off.
Right. That'll learn you.
That's what happens.
It's exactly what the nuns told us. If you have sex, the ultimate evil will come out of a camera box in the wall and peck your face in.
I just want to point out that these two kids go into a room with about 500 cameras and decide this is where we need to make out. I'm going to take my clothes off.
But all those cameras were facing away from them, Amanda.
Of course. I mean, why not? Why can't she wait? And why can't he see her outside of this job? What's wrong with the good old fashioned?
Kind of like we were getting hints that she was specifically there to spy on this whole operation. Like it's like she was trying to.
But yeah.
It kind of seemed like she really didn't want him as much as she wanted,
She wanted to get in that place bad.
Wyndham Earle told her to plant a bug in that bonsai thing on the table.
Wyndham Earle.
Yeah, the bonsai tree is kind of an original series callback.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what's the next set of questions you had? So that was best.
I'm going back to my notes, my old notes. Ray says he's at a place called the Dutchman's, and it doesn't even exist. And he says, "I know what it is." And the next place he shows up is at the arm wrestling cult.
No.
Right?
No, it's where Philip Jeffries.
Dutchman's is the convenience store.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's the Dutchman. So it's like the Flying Dutchman disappears.
Because Ray says that while they're in the arm wrestling cult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think they
cult, which was literally and referentially over the top.
But are they thrown into anarchy once Mr. C leaves? Do they not have any idea what to do?
I don't know.
Because they don't have a boss. They don't know who can arm wrestle the best.
They just have a guy following them around going, "Do you need any money?"
I want that guy.
Yeah.
No, I think they probably all have to arm wrestle again to decide.
They do. They have to have an arm wrestle off.
Yes.
Speaking of who's in charge, arm wrestle-a-thon.
What is this, kindergarten? Nursery school?
That's for the nursery school teacher. Speaking of being in charge, I do want to point out that Marc-Anthony, you have your double R mug. Of course you do. I, of course, have my Commander-in-Chief mug.
All right.
So we're
President Sisk.
We're being very true to ourselves today.
Indeed.
No, it just is a red cup. All right. All three Coopers together. I don't know what that means.
Oh, like a musical number? I've thought of that. I would like to see Mr. C, Dale Cooper, and Dougie. And they could sing, that song, Triplets?
I want Mr. C to be the soprano.
3 little unexpected children simultaneously. The doctor brought us in. You can see we will be 3 forever and day. E-I-O. You would know how agonizing being triplets can be. Each one is individually the victim of this critical day. Yeah, it would be really cute. We'll do it. Have you seen somebody made a...
Are we?
Yeah, that would be better. I would like to see Dougie and Cooper and Mr. C singing 3 Little Maids from School. Because they are filled to the brim with girlish glee.
All right.
Yeah.
So there's a time when Ed is eating soup, and suddenly his reflection is really far behind him.
Yep.
Why? Does it have anything to do with the fact that after Where's Billy, something has changed? Is it have to do with reset? Like, does Cooper reset something when he changes the past that doesn't really change? Why won't the past change? These are like a million questions. I don't know.
But I mean, I do think that it is related to that. I think that it's, you know, there were, let's say, like glitches in the timeline were happening. And, you know, that's why we saw a lot of things like Ed's reflection, like the thing with the double R where all the customers switched around when they were looking for Billy.
In part 7.
Yeah. And yeah, maybe that did have something to do with Cooper changing things. So in the final dossier, Agent Preston is talking about how she was looking at the history of Twin Peaks and trying to figure out what had happened, and she remembered, you know, the investigation about the murder of Laura Palmer, but when she went to investigate it, now Laura went missing, and Leland had killed himself in his house a few years later. So she's like, but I remember it differently. And then later she's like, I'm starting to forget those things, but I've written them down. Like, so it was like all of their memories were kind of catching up to what had changed in the world.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the final dossier, but I figured, I thought maybe that would be something you could tell us, Marc-Anthony, because I was pretty sure you had read it. Yes. I don't know how to feel about those Mark Frost books. I mean, I did mostly read The Secret History, but you know, just how canonical we should think of those books. But it seems to suggest that in Mark Frost's mind, anyway, the episode, the stuff that happens in part 17 did sort of take to some extent, and maybe it had the slightly unintended effect of diverting Laura Palmer to this kind of pocket dimension where she becomes Carrie Page.
Right.
Because you're saying the idea is that Laura Palmer disappeared.
Right. Rather than dying, she was, you know, the mystery was it was a disappearance. And theoretically, Cooper might still show up to investigate that disappearance if it was thought to be related to the Teresa Banks murder in some way, I guess. But, you know, in any case, the world would be very different without Laura having been killed.
Why do we see it twice in the last episode? Why do we see him leading her twice?
We see it again at the beginning of part 18. Like it's almost feels like a recap at that point.
Yeah. You know, with that though, like I really do feel like there's something being said here about, you know, you want to have the old Twin Peaks back, but that kills it if you do that. You know, it's like if we go back to that original thing, that ruins what was good about it, and so it changes everything that you love. You wouldn't have everything that you love if you retouched that at all, and that's kind of what Cooper going back and doing that. That's why it's not necessarily the right thing to do. It ruins the world that we know. Although that shot of Pete fishing, there's something really glorious about that.
It's wonderful. I mean, I in a way, it's funny. At the first time through, when we got to the end of the series, there was a sense of feeling sort of bereft and feeling like, oh, it didn't give us what we wanted. It didn't answer our questions. And whether we admired that artistic choice or not, it felt a little like, it felt a little frustrating. But in a way, you could look at the ending as more of a have your cake and eat it too situation, because part 17 does give us all that stuff. It erases Laura Palmer's death. It revisits the earliest moments of the pilot and adjusts them to account for 25 years of effort on the part of Dale Cooper, you know. And then it also gives us this totally ambiguous, frustrating final ending that is very similar to the feeling of frenzied frustration that you might feel after finishing season 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That leads into a question that I had, which is, does the return, and I mean both aesthetically and also just as a piece of work, make the original 2 seasons look dated or feel dated, or did it significantly change the way you felt about anything in the original 2 seasons?
I think it certainly changed the way that I look at the original. And I mean, even in terms of narrative, just kind of watching it, I think about it differently now. But I think aesthetically, it is as Noah said earlier, it's markedly different from the original. So watching the original now, it does put the original in a different, I don't know if I want to say dated, but its aesthetic is clearly separate. And if you don't have Fire Walk with Me to bridge those, it would be awkward. But there are a lot of specific areas where I feel that it sturdily enhances the way that I experienced the first season. I think a good example of that would be Bobby Briggs, who I never really liked very much as a character before, and even wasn't that thrilled with the performance of the actor. And now I really enjoyed the new Bobby, and looking back at the character based on what the new Bobby is like, I think I get a deeper understanding of who that kid was, and he makes more sense to me than he did originally when I just thought he was kind of an asshole. And there's that sense for a lot of things in the show where the way that I look at the original show is colored in a positive way by watching The Return. But also, I have to say that I think The Return is what I always wanted Twin Peaks to be, really. I was like, I loved what it was, but I wanted weirder and more frustrating. So that's what I got. I just got, what I loved about it, but more.
Again, this bodes well for your love life. You want it weirder and more frustrating, Marc-Anthony.
I bet I can find that.
I think for me, as you know, I was later to Twin Peaks than either of you was, but I think originally I was. Hi, oh my God, Amanda's in here now. How did you do that?
I'm never going to explain it.
Original encounters with the original Twin Peaks, the mindset was, well, let's try to get into what this Twin Peaks thing is all about, Now, when I've watched the original series, as I have in its entirety, just in the last several months, now I'm specifically watching it to make comparisons with The Return and to pick up on little premonitions or seeds of inspiration that led to things in The Return or in Fire Walk with Me. So you do watch it a little differently. You pay a lot more attention, maybe not a lot more, but a different kind of specific attention to Major Briggs, for example. Mm-hmm. He was always a very compelling and great character, but in a funny way, Major Briggs is like the main character in The Return. In a sense, he really is the primary mover of that story, even though he appears only as a headless corpse.
Beautiful things about that season is that Major Briggs plays such a huge part in it without really showing his face if it's not floating in space or making things happen.
It's like that. It goes back to that thing about dealing with absence. The absence of actors who aren't there, the absence of characters who aren't there. The whole thing would have been different if Don Davis and David Bowie had been around to participate.
David Bowie still would have been put in a teapot. It just would have been David Bowie. Amanda, how about you for this?
I just don't connect them.
They're like totally separate things to you?
It's like a spinoff. It's like
it is kind of spinoff. It's a good word for it.
Charles in Charge today keeps coming up, but it's it's a spinoff. It's
Twin Peaks was a Charles in Charge spinoff originally, so that's not surprising.
Or it's like what you said, Marc-Anthony. It's like what we watched. Those 18 episodes were actually a sliver of time stuck into the first two seasons, somewhere in the first two seasons. That happened in like a split second, but we saw it now. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think what it does is it just takes out Leland. It's not the same thing. It doesn't seem to be happening for the same reasons.
But I feel like had it been the same thing, then I would have been pretty disappointed because I've already got that. I've already seen that.
You can dig deeper into Bob without turning Bob into Judy and having Bob mean nothing anymore. Like Bob became this controllable entity that Cooper could use or not use, and that just basically, for me, became a metaphor for like rage or violence or whatever. It was no longer Bob, this thing that when Leland was a little boy, he let him in, and this thing that killed Laura because she wouldn't let him in, and she got tired finally and said, "Fuck it, kill me." You know, like it's just not the same. Judy, like, yeah, okay, let's dig deeper, but let's make a connection so we know we're digging deeper about something. I don't know. I didn't think they were the same. Of course, it looks dated because it is, but and of course, yeah, like I wouldn't have even brought up the thing about this being a design piece, except that it was just beautiful.
But the original series was really beautiful too, in its own way for its time, and still today. I think it's the atmosphere and tone it creates is still really engaging and fun.
Yeah. It is. The original was known for being like especially cinematic for a television show. Like, oh well, it looks and feels like a movie, but we're now very used to television looking and feeling like a movie, and something that felt cinematic for television in 1989. We are now much more tuned into like, well, there's obvious spots for commercial breaks here, you know,
yes.
and a sort of a more ostentatious use of music to give a scene emotional subtext, you know. The use of music, as we've discussed in our old chats, is back when we used to talk face to face, is much more, you know, reserved in the return. It feels less like television, but it does feel more like television today.
I watched this time around. I really got caught in the sound design of it.
Oh yeah,
and
listen to the sounds.
I didn't even know, you know, this, which is just like me not to know it, and you probably did. But I went down and actually watched credits. I was like, who did the sound design? And it's Lynch. Lynch did it. And I thought, well, of course, it's just the sound is amazing.
It really is.
And I mean, everything is just so good.
I would love to be able to watch the whole series in a nice big theater with a great sound system and see what that's like.
They screened it at MoMA here. We didn't go, but they screened the entire series, third season at MoMA.
Where you're wrong, I would have gone if I were you, but you are wrong, so you didn't.
That's exactly right.
I don't remember that. Did I just block it out? Did I just say no?
I don't want to.
Just walk away.
I'm not sure what it was. I think maybe we had just bought the Blu-rays at that point and watched it. We did watch the whole return like after we got the Blu-rays a couple of months ago, and then we did this cram it back in to refresh our memories in the last few days. I think that might have been it. We had just seen it, but yeah, it is incredibly cinematic, and the sound design and the visual design are both, you know, extremely compelling and way beyond television in 1989, certainly.
Yeah.
Question. Two questions. If someone gave you, someone you didn't know, gave you that picture and said this would look nice on your wall, or walked up and gave you that ring, would you take either one of them?
Well, not again. Yeah, I probably would, because I would. I mean, if we're talking like realistically, I would just assume it was someone that is a Twin Peaks fan, and I think it was delightful, and make sure they didn't follow me home.
If I was like out in the world and the Marble Rye lady from Seinfeld handed me a painting and said, "This would look nice on your wall," I think I would say, "Is it free?"
Okay, one interesting thing. Well, this isn't even interesting. It's just because who I am. When we were watching Fire Walk with Me today, the trailer that was missing belonged to the Chalfonts, and before that, it belonged to the Chalfonts.
Right.
Two Chalfonts.
Two Chalfonts.
Something. Doppelgangers, maybe.
Now that is really interesting to think about.
You think about that, Tammy. So we're about to hit the 2-hour mark. Should we move into wrapping it up?
Well, I guess so. I mean, I guess we should. Although we certainly this has a different quality from our original series when we were, I mean, the original Faces of Stone conversations where we were recapping each episode. This kind of postscript, yeah, it's harder to find a structure for it. But I guess 2 hours is a bit much, and maybe we should try to bring this thing in for a landing.
No one should be subjected to 2 hours of us yelling.
Well, we have.
Let's also like I really love talking to you guys. I think some people enjoy watching us. We should find some more things to talk about besides Twin Peaks. Just because it's called Faces of Stone doesn't mean we can only talk about Twin Peaks.
We could talk about Mount Rushmore. We could take a road trip.
Let's fucking do it.
Also, yeah, it is time to shut this down because look how dark it's gotten. It's like the sun is setting. But you can't even see my face anymore. It's so sad.
But why don't we give our theses for if there is...
Is it time for our predictions segment?
It is.
Feet of Stone.
So if there is a 4th season of Twin Peaks.
Amanda thinks Norma's going to die.
Norma dies!
The twist is Norma's been dead all along.
That's the whole point of the show.
Nadine and Ed have been hallucinating Norma.
She is the dreamer.
So, what do you think would happen? Season 4.
Predictions?
I don't think Kyle MacLachlan would be in it.
Really?
I think it'd be another walk with me. I think it would be like, I don't know, some rockabilly kid.
Some rockabilly kid. If there is a season 4 starring Chris Isaak, I will shit bricks.
It's not Chris Isaak. Whoever Chris Isaak is these days, which I don't know because I don't keep up with these things anymore because I'm too old.
That would be interesting if there is another season, but it's Heather Graham, Joan Chen.
The people that weren't in this one,
Chris Isaak, Piper Laurie.
I still would really, really love to see both. What's her name? Lara Flynn Boyle and Moira Kelly as.
I'd like to see them wrestle in Jello.
Well, who wouldn't?
We were laughing today, saying, "Well, why didn't when Donna walks in and that movie that they made? Why is Laura like, what the fuck? The fuck her when she calls her down to the sidewalk? Why is she like, wait a minute, who the fuck are you?
Who are you?
Like Darren. Anyway, what are your predictions?
It's hard to make predictions about a prospective 4th season because it's not very clear to me where exactly the 3rd season leaves us. I mean, if at the end of the 3rd season we're saying that like Dale Cooper is sort of lost, wandering between different dimensions, he doesn't know what year it is, like, and with the murder of Laura Palmer, though apparently has been sort of undone in some sense. It's like we'd be picking up again in a world that doesn't quite match the world we've been watching from these 18 parts. I mean, Lynch and Frost have certainly said, "Oh yeah, we could do a 4th season." Like, it's not. They have not said like, "No, it's over." That we ended it, so that there's no more to say. So I guess in their minds anyway, there are places it could go. I don't know. Would it be more of the idea of Cooper pursuing through the lodges and through this other dimension, pursuing some kind of resolution to the original Laura Palmer case?
Yeah, I mean, I really like you. I'm pretty lost as to what could happen next. I mean, I assume that I would think that the tone that was set with episode 18 would be something that would be perpetuated for a while until maybe returning back to something more familiar. But I think, it would be the kind of slow burn Lost Highway season.
It is a little bit sad to think that if there were a 4th season, there would be no Albert, no Log Lady.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there would be a lot of things missing. A lot of great people.
More of those than there were in the third season.
By the way, I was watching I don't know if it was a Comic-Con panel or an interview or what, but Kimmy Roberts, is it Robertson?
Yeah.
Who plays Lucy?
Yeah.
They were talking a bit about Miguel Ferrer, and she pretty, not very specifically, but more or less said he had a giant penis. When they were, people were sharing memories of him, and a lot of people were saying things like, "Oh, he was just such a ladies' man. He really just kind of put on the charm, and all the women loved him." And Kimmy Robertson was like, "Wow, it's because he was packing a Magnum." And that's not exactly what she said, but it was insinuated pretty strongly.
Well, now he's dead.
All because of his giant schlong.
That's what you get.
It's heavy.
All right. Well,
so
I'm going to get ready to go to the Insect Fear Film Festival, which is one of our local traditions in Champaign-Urbana. Every year we have a film festival featuring giant bugs or whatever. So this year's theme is ticks.
Oh, is it? It's tick year at the Insect Fear Film Festival.
Yeah. We've had giant grasshopper year. There have been spider years. There have been forensic entomology years. This year it's ticks.
Well, next year frog moths.
We can only hope.
Is that like next year in Israel?
And next year in Jerusalem.
Frog moths.
It's been a pleasure to revisit this with you guys. I think I'm sure to the satisfaction of our audience, we have solved Twin Peaks, which was our goal.
Now they know all they need to know.
Yes.
Yep. And at first I didn't want to tell everybody everything. I wanted them to enjoy the mystery, figure it out on their own, and I also didn't want Lynch to be so angry with us. But it's our responsibility to share.
We didn't need to blow up his spots. We were being polite.
We didn't mean to blow up his spot. All right.
Well, friends. We will see you again in 25 years on Faces of Stone.